brain loves familiarity, pattern. So it's easier to remember things when you have a narrative or a story around it. Also, if you have strong what I call as memory anchors or cues. Architects do design future memories perhaps, but they're not actively designing the memories, but they're designing the spaces where people will live, have these experiences, and these experiences will be recorded as memories, right? So things which seem symmetrical, coherent, familiar, or which make more sense to you. So if that is what is beauty, right? People who rely increasingly on only Google Maps and do not self-navigate through a space is shrinking, which is interesting, right?
So it's not it's the physical shrinkage.
The physical shrinkage.
Not just that the neurons don't light up. It's the brain becomes smaller.
Yeah. They've seen that the mice which are raised in the enriched environment cage, they sort of perform better.
Oh wow.
They remember things better. Their spatial memory is stronger. Their motor movement is better. You're a little bit more open, and you're not fully in flight or fight mode, but you're kind of your energy levels are high. Your adrenaline is a little peak. That's when you're more curious. You're more exploratory. You're more open. You are more. You're recording all your senses more acutely.
You think all the time. How many times do you think of the process of thinking? You plan, ideate, design. But have you thought of the process of designing, the process of ideating, the process of planning? What goes on in that beautiful brain of yours? Do you think that if you know all of this, you may be able to plan better, ideate better, be more creative? Let's hear from Dr. Nishita Bhembre, who's flown all the way from Australia, from the Brain Research Institute, who's going to demystify and simplify what happens inside of a brain for us. Will it make you a better architect? Well, let's see when we ask her a few questions. Thank you so much for joining us here, Nishita, today. It's very interesting if you look at the research and the variety of it that she's done. If you've seen the movie Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, the exact same thing that Kate Winslet does to her mind and raises it off to a tabula rasa face, she does it many times to her mice. So maybe the first thing that we'll have to do is to ask her about her experiments and to learn more about the brain from her, about the architecture and the design of the brain first, so that everything that she's going to tell us henceforward will make sense from the biology of things. All right, Nishita. So tell us, yeah, when it comes to the architecture of the brain, how does the brain really like work, function?
So it's interesting you bring in design, because I think the way the brain is designed is such that all the parts that are closer together anatomically also sort of work very closely together. So the form influences or informs the function. So in that sense, when I talk about memory, let's say evolutionarily, fear is a very important form of memory, right? Because that keeps us alive, helps our survival, statistics, instincts. So the center which records fear or a fear-based memory lies very close in the brain um, to the memory center or the core memory structure, which converts all our temporary random memories into long term memories. So, most fear memories, if the experience is traumatic enough, do get converted into long term memories.
Nice. So if I ask you that what works better, the carrot or the stick?
Definitely, the stick works consistently more robustly better.
So then why do in design systems or education systems we look more for rewards? And that is where the psychology of things is moving. But if the brain is actually, functioning in the exact opposite direction, then are we not being counterproductive about this?
That's a fascinating question. And I definitely believe in spare the rod. I don't believe in spare the rod, spoil the child. But what I'm saying is, uh, for essentially for fear-based memory, we learn better or we remember things and experiences better when we feel safe, So always the stick method might not be the best to encourage learning and creativity and promote growth per se, but it's an extremely crucial tool to have when it comes to all the problems we faced when we were cavemen and hunters and gatherers, where survival was the topmost priority.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that we've been in this safe comfort of an air conditioned room only in the last 50 years.
Correct.
So before that, evolutionarily, I think fear was one way of survival, like you pointed out.
Yeah, make sure you live long enough to have a life.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. So now, moving on from how the brain is, because it's very nice that you spoke about form, function, and these elements and aspects, because they're very crucial to the way in which one approaches design. And the very fact that the brain itself is designed to be so productive and effective is a very interesting, interesting note. Now, do you think that, when we talk about different gimmicks of improving memory, etc., like if I ask you to give you a random list of 20 things and say, try to memorize it. But instead, if I design it around this whole concept of memory palace, then the thinking, the approach, the recollection and recall of that list becomes more stronger. So, do you think that uh, memory is something which is very spatial in terms of how it performs better? Because a memory palace is a place that you imagine.
Yeah.
Against just a list of kach, 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 these are the things that you need to remember.
Definitely. Our brain loves familiarity patterns. So it's easier to remember things when you have a narrative or a story around it. Also, if you have strong what I call as memory anchors or cues to remember. So if you design a list of things you need to remember around a place that you've been or you're familiar with, and you sort of imagine that list of things around, like, okay, let's say you're in your house, so these things on my sofa, these things on my kitchen table, things like that, you're going to when it comes to remembering or recalling the memory, right, what you actually do then in that case is visualize yourself in the space, and then you walk through your living room and your kitchen, and then you can actually visually imagine those places there, and that's how your recall is better, more reliable, and you can, like, it's also quicker often. Whereas when you just randomly remember this boring list of things, there's a high chance there's no strong cues, there's nothing, you just got to remember one thing after the other. You're probably more likely to forget things, not even complete the list, or you need to come up with a specific pattern that your brain is good at remembering. When it's a boring list, make it exciting. Either use music to remember it, or like put it in alphabetical order, something like that. But spatially encoded, like a spatial memory, when you think about a journey or in a space, and multi-sensory sort of cues to remember certain memory, that's usually a more stronger memory and easier to recall.
So why is it so?
It's just because once again, if I were to bring us back to the hunter-gatherer stage of our evolution, then remembering facts was harmless, was not going to kill us. But if we didn't remember how to navigate through spaces or some spatial cues and specific landmarks, then the chances of us not surviving were high. So it was more beneficial to remember how to navigate through spaces by remembering specific distinctive landmarks, distinctive features in the space,
Right.
to then
So to every day for me to go to that berry plant which has the most delicious berries,
absolutely, yeah,
then I need to take a left or a right around this tree which has
correct. And then even like, actually we were talking about it the other day, but the Bimbetka paintings, in the prehistoric paintings in the cave, right, what you can see there is that there's a record of, back then, humans keeping a record of spaces, and they're having spatial awareness, right, in terms of directionality, um, remembering spaces from a perspective of your own body, whether you're taking a right or a left, that sort of a thing. As well as, okay, once you're in the space, on the right is a mango tree, on the left is a temple, like whatever, these kind of cues that you remember, those are stronger than many of the any other factual details that you might remember about the space. So every memory has a strong emotional quotient, so you kind of remember things better through your own personal experience, how you feel while you're navigating through the space, what motions you made. So it's all, if you think about it, it's all very personal. So
Right.
that's how you remember better. So secondhand stories might be a little,
Right.
less
Because you've not experienced them.
correct, correct.
And experience comes, like you said, from all the senses.
Correct.
And those senses get activated in that whole spatial.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when it comes to, how does the brain prioritize memory? It is fear first.
Yes, I'd say so. Yeah.
Then there will be spatial, or it changes for different people. So it would be music for some, it would be space for some others.
No, I wouldn't even put fear and spatial separately. I would think about it as one and the same, right? Like, think about it. You're navigating, you're walking through a forest, right? You got to remember when you cross this particular, let's say, a imaginary boundary in the forest, beyond these particular trees or something, there are like leopards there or something. So not to go in that direction. So the memory is fear motivated, but it is a
But the
spatial
recall,
memory.
recall happens through
Yeah,
the
so the
space.
representation in your brain can be very complex, where it'll take your emotion into account, which is fear, but it'll also take the space into account. So your memory will be represented in both those parts of your brain.
Right.
Yeah.
And rewards, like, what happens? How does dopamine and
So
rewards really work with spaces?
anticipation, you like you mentioned the berry example earlier, right? If you know the juiciest and the sweetest berry is in that direction, then your entire motivation to go in that direction, despite any threat you might face, is purely to have that juicy berry, right? Which is your reward, right? So reward is always, even though it's a carrot dangling at the end, it's always serves as a motivation for you to then navigate through space. And once again, to navigate through that space safely to and fro, you need to have spatial memory.
Right.
So it's all mutually inclusive, I would say. Yeah.
Because if you really look at it, the way in which an architect would approach the design of a space, is it that then they are responsible for the curation of future memories? Because how that space is designed, how that school is designed, will not impact just the lessons that are being taught there, but the life lessons of the child that they're experiencing in the school. How office functions
Yep.
is going to define not just the like professional knowledge that they need to kind of hone and build on, but also the things that they need to know from learn from, again, the life lessons that come into
Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely I would even if I had to simplistically put it, yes, I think architects do design future memories perhaps, but they're not actively designing the memories, but they're designing the spaces where people will live, have these experiences, and these experiences will be recorded as memories, right? So, like for example, in an office, to make the office personable, you sometimes customize it with your, like, little plant and your photos from your family and things like that. So that kind of brings in your personal emotional quotient into a space which is supposed to help you focus. It helps your nervous system sort of relax, be more productive in that sense. So that's why that's encouraged nowadays in the offices, to sort of customize your cubicle area, because otherwise it's all uniform, right? What defines your cubicle area from others? Yeah.
Correct. Because there are so many other emotions attached to it also, like anxiety,
Correct. Stress.
work pressure, stress. So then, bringing in that personalization and customization would help.
Correct.
But like when you spoke about form function, there is another element to it, which is beauty. And oftentimes I feel that, do we have some kind of a bias towards things that are beautiful? Because, like, Volkswagen Beetle, okay, may be the cutest car that I have seen, but it is not the car with the most mileage or efficiency, or from the workings of a car perspective, it's not really the best. But I would still, and it may have maintenance issues, etc., etc. But I would still go for that car because it looks cute, it looks nice. So, do we have like a bias towards things which are beautiful? So beauty still lies in the eyes of the beholder, right? So what's beautiful to you might not be as beautiful to me, right? True. Let's call it symmetry. Symmetry, okay. Okay, let's call it things which seem symmetrical, coherent, familiar, or which make more sense to you. So if that is what is beauty, right? So then those beautiful things do relax you a little, they reduce your cognitive load a little bit. So you are less on guard, less alert, more relaxed, and more sort of trusting of that shape and symmetry. And if I had to put it absolutely simply, right? So the other day I was thinking about this. What example do I give about what's beautiful and what's not? And I was thinking like a round roti is so much more appealing and
Right.
appeasing to us, right? Versus to like a various map shaped rotis. And then if you think about the form as well, and we discussed this earlier, um, that to get that round shape, meaning it'll be like a proper roti or a fulka, which is like evenly cooked and things like that, right? So it's more is nicer to taste and all these things, right? So with the shape does inform its end result and things like that. So I mean that's the best way I can explain how beauty is more appealing. So aesthetic or symmetry is appealing to the brain because the brain is just more trusting of it. So the brain immensely relaxes around it. And why is it trusting? Because most of the things in nature are symmetrical, like a leaf or a branch or a tree or something
Yep,
like
yep,
that.
yep. Yeah. Most of the things we come across, even our own body, if you think about it, is quite we have
Symmetrical.
even on both sides. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. External body. Yeah. Yeah.
But beauty, okay. So
Yeah.
you're saying that even if someone does not look beautiful, if they're symmetrical, then it's possible that.
Yeah, yeah. Possible. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So, since most of your experiments are not on humans,
Mm.
they are on tiny little creatures inside mazes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, are there any experiments that you've done with mice that you could, share with us that you think really can help architects, designers, product designers, furniture designers, textile designers, maybe food curators, or anyone like any scope of design to really, understand the process of how neuroscience connects with experience, connects with memory, connects with feelings of good and bad, of how the hormones of dopamine or something else are kind of released. So can you share your experiments with us?
Right. So one of the coming back to the stick example, right, which is a fear memory. So one of the most reliable forms of memory is fear memory. And for this, what we do this one particular experiment called as active place avoidance. Now, what this experiment is, the mouse is put in a particular context or a spatial context. So, in a particular room, in a particular arena, and this arena has a rotating disc at the bottom of it, right? And let's say this circular disc, one quadrant of the pie, that is the disc, is a shock zone, right?
Shock zone.
Yeah. So think about this. We are trying to create a fear memory, so we need to create fear in the mind. So we're not barbarians.
Right.
This is a very controlled experiment where we shock the mouse to induce fear. And of course, we want to not induce general fear and anxiety. We want to induce context specific fear
To that quadrant.
to that quadrant, to that arena, right? So we put the mouse in that arena, we habituate the mouse there. So it's not getting any shocks. The mouse is easy roaming around, whatever. When the experiment starts, that particular quadrant is the shock zone, right? Like I said. So when the mouse comes across on that shock zone, it gets shocked. And it has to actively avoid that place. Hence the name, active place avoidance, right? So then looking at now, thinking about spatial memory, right? And this is precisely what the hunter gatherers were doing as well. So it'll look at the cues in the room and in that arena, which will be on the walls of the room or something like that. And it'll actively try to avoid the shock zone by trying to remember the spatial cues. Um, let's say on the four corners of the room, we've put like one circle here, one triangle, one square, because mice can see shapes,
Correct.
right? And then it knows that when it goes closer to the circle or something like that, that's where my shock zone is. So the disc is rotating, but the shock zone is stationary.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So then when it knows that, oh, near the circle, I get shocked. So it'll start avoiding and running to the other parts of the rotating disc. So because the disc is rotating, it'll come to the shock zone again and again, but it'll try to escape and get less shock in the process. That's when we know the fear memory is formed. Now, a couple of days later, when you put the mouse back into that zone, into that area, and you're not shocking it at this point, right? But it's just in the context of the space, the mouse is gonna still avoid that circle part wala room. Yeah. So
That really happened with me with public toilets.
ah,
Okay, so I have this very most common memory of public toilets.
yeah.
And I was really pleasantly surprised when I went to some beaches in Goa,
Uh-huh.
and the public toilets were really like not as a public toilet would be, and
Yeah.
that kind of the fear memory that was induced in me through all my lifelong experiences suddenly came down crashing because it was a completely different experience that I
Right.
faced there.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, something like that. Yeah. So you need to be able to navigate through space and still under the context of whatever reward or fear, and figure out the best option for you. Let's say, because at the end of the memories are context for life. So you remember things because you can be better next time. Yeah. But I wonder what's going to happen with increased reliance on things like Google Maps, and we don't really remember landmarks as such. We just rely on this gadget in our hand.
Phones becoming smarter, people becoming deep.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And I recently read this one paper, which I'm not sure what kind of work they've done in that, but they said that the hippocampus in people who rely increasingly on only Google Maps and do not self-navigate through a space um, is shrinking, which is interesting, right?
So it's not it's a physical shrinkage.
The physical shrinkage.
Not just that the neurons don't light up; it's the brain becomes smaller.
Yeah, because it probably started off like that. The neurons don't light up enough, but now with the increasing use and that being the norm, wonder if there are physical changes in the form, because we don't use it anymore. Yeah.
So when you were actually experimenting, talking about the mice experiment, I realized that there's a lot of designing that happens in your experiment itself.
Correct. So for the perfect execution of any idea, I believe you need to have a good design, solid design, right? Certain spaces also dictate how we remember things. You asked me earlier whether why not reward doesn't work well for memory, but there are experiments in mice which have also shown us that, right? So we call it this enriched environment. When we put mice in a nicer cage, maybe a cage with more height, for the cathedral effect, right? And then we have more toys in there and more like nooks and crannies and more design in the cage itself. It's not a standard cage. And then the mice are raised in either a standard cage or this kind of like an enriched environment cage. And then they've seen that the mice which are raised in the enriched environment cage, they sort of perform better.
Oh wow.
They remember things better. Their spatial memory is stronger. Their motor movement is better. They remember a lot
But
of
you don't
things.
need to then use the stick in this case.
Not necessarily, but then that was interesting because they were reared such. They did not know any difference, right? So an interesting experiment would be to rear them in a standard cage first and then put them in a enriched.
And that is done?
I am not aware of it, but maybe, yeah.
So in a world which is all beautiful and all glossy,
Yeah,
I think learning does not then need a stick. It can only
correct.
only the carrot can work.
Correct. People are, I mean, the mice at least are relaxed enough to, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
They're less anxious as well. They found that. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Mm.
makes sense. Now, when it comes to, because you spoke about cathedral effect,
Mm.
and I was just thinking, does the way in which the space is designed
Mhm.
influence or change maybe your heart rate, maybe how you're feeling, your anxiety levels, stress levels, whether you're feeling calm and rested,
Mhm.
or things like that? And is it just psychological, like it's just the way you feel and hence becomes personal, or is it something which is more, like more deeper, goes into the functions of the brain?
Mhm. You've hit the nail on the head, and pardon me for if I'm getting too jargony at this point, but we have these two aspects of our autonomic nervous system, right? Which is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system.
And no,
Okay.
jargon's one.
Jargon. Okay. So basically, let's think of this as system A and system B, right? So now system A is the system which is in control when you're relaxed, you're calm, you're in your rested state. That is the best state to do more focused work.
Correct.
Right? So that state would be when you know you're safe, number one. So fear is not nowhere in place. But probably because you want to focus on specific tasks and do task oriented goals, then you kind of want to be in like a less destructive space, but it's like open and wide enough for you to do your thing, but it's still less destructive, right? As opposed to the system B, where you're a little bit more open and you're not fully in flight or fight mode, but you're kind of your energy levels are high, your adrenaline is a little peaked. That's when you're more curious, you're more exploratory, you're more open, you're recording all your senses more acutely. So in that phase, you want to learn more or take in more information, right? So that's where you want a more open space where you can move around, you can expend that energy, explore, and that's where you learn better. So depends on what kind of learning you want to do, more like task focused, or whether you want to do more exploratory learning, you can then design space accordingly, right? So, and then of course, educational institutes need to have both those kind of options,
Correct.
right? So you need to have the libraries which help more focused work, but then your classrooms and your playgrounds and your common areas which help the more creative, exploratory, that kind of work, right?
It's interesting that you said that libraries are for focus, but classrooms
Mm,
are for exploration.
correct.
But haven't classrooms since forever been about sitting in one place like this, having that book in front of you,
Yeah.
and then kind of reading it up? So
Yeah.
do you have any suggestions for how classrooms could be changed or designed a little differently based on the different types of learners that we really have, and then kind of in bring bring in what do you say, analysis of those learners into the way in which you design that space?
Yeah, definitely. Like, don't you like? Okay, answer this question. What do you think? Would you learn better if your classroom was kind of like a science museum where you could touch things and like do those little games and understand the concepts, or would you learn better if it if your classroom feels like a waiting room at a outside a doctor's clinic? Um, and the answer is simple, right?
Correct.
You learn better when you apply the concept straight away. So I definitely think like like open spaces, more natural light, so your system is a bit calmer but you're still a bit more exploratory. Places which have the cathedral effect, so higher ceilings. Then maybe I'm not sure, maybe psychology can inform your design a little bit, but maybe play with the colors as well, because I'm sure colors affect emotions as well. And just make sure that emotionally the state is charged, let's say. You're in charging mode, but you're like you can still you're absorbing things, and your battery is not depleting. So it's the same. If I were to bring it back to Mars, it's an enriching environment, right? You have a place where you can, do the hamster wheel. You have a place where you're nesting. You have your water and food area. You have a higher ceiling so you can climb up, and there's a social component in their cages as well, where they can look at and smell at the mice, and so which is all nice, right? And who wouldn't learn better and remember things
Won't you
better?
get distracted by all of this, Nishita?
Exactly. So that's what I mean. You need both the spaces, right? So you need the space where you need to do more focused, task-oriented things. When you have an assignment, you can't be in such a space. You're never going to get your assignment done. That's when you need to go to a library or like a study room, right? Which has like a slightly lower ceiling, probably, which has more less distractions, more plain room, let's say. And then you go in with your work, you finish your work, and come out. But if you're like in a like an more you want to absorb information kind of phase, and you don't want that closed unimaginative space, right? Yeah, you want a more, oh, I can ask questions here, I can talk to other people here, that kind of space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is really where most of the education institutes who are trying to change or alter their approaches, because in one of our previous conversations, you actually talked about 4 different types of learners. And it's not just those visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and all that kind of influence the spaces, but also how those spaces, as you said, enrich and build up more. So it's not just limited to schools then it kind of transcends into offices,
Correct, everything.
because it then defines productivity of the individual.
Absolutely.
It transcends into an operation theater.
Yep.
And you know why you can't have high ceilings in an operation theater, because you need to be really focused for those
Correct,
whatever number of
correct.
hours
And
of a
it's
bypass surgery.
and you need like a smaller room because you need only the amount of people that you need. You need all your tools, everything organized closer to you. They can't be like far away in a cupboard. But when you want kids to be kinetic and learn, you can put things far away and they can run to their cubbies and come back and things like that. Yeah. So the purpose has to inform your design, but for sure, how you feel in the space could also inform your design.
Correct.
And this is how you feel in most spaces. In open spaces, you feel a certain type
But
of
this
way.
can't be generalized, because when you said beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder,
Correct.
I'm like, for me, a minimalistic decor may feel very calming. But maybe for you, it's just downright boring. You would like those gaudy Indian aesthetics into your space in the room.
Absolutely.
So then is this like, personality driven, or the brain is wired differently for different people? Like, how does it?
Yeah. And personality, I wouldn't even call personality and brain wiring two separate things. Your brain wiring is what makes you, so that ego your personality, right?
Right.
So if you're someone who's, let's say, grown up in the countryside, probably a city is too chaotic for you, too busy, right? But if you're someone who's grown up in a city, in an urban like sort of area, then probably somewhere country is more quieter, and maybe it might be peaceful for a few days, but then later you're like, oh my god, where's the stimulation, right? So of course that the levels of stimulation we need to be in those specific state A or state B of our nervous system depends, and it'll differ from person to person, but on an average, we can agree that open spaces sort of boost creativity and um, uh, exploration and learning and absorbing new information, whereas more slightly less distractive and more closed spaces are more nicer for goal oriented and task oriented tasks, that kind of productivity. So it depends on what you're looking at, right?
So when you say open spaces,
Yeah.
one thing comes to my mind is biophilia. That these days, even in interiors and styling or architecture in general, bringing in the outside in, and making the inside feel more open is like a growing trend. And maybe then it's not just a trend which will come and go, but it's something that may stay longer, because it's something that I feel is wired now in our brain.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, coming back to the office workers having a plant at their desk or in their little cubicle, right? Why do we bother to have that one little plant there, right? Is because nature per se, or let's say, even if I don't know really to say it emphatically, but even probably the color green, right? It sort of instantly has this stress reducing, calming effect on us. It relaxes our nervous system. So we are again more amenable to learn. We are more alert in a non-survival kind of mode, kind of way. We pay attention and we are able to relax enough to learn, right? And this is probably because the nature helps reduce our stress hormone or cortisol levels.
Right.
It makes our feel good hormones go up a little bit. So it's like a reward, a mini reward, but which makes the environment nicer, but it's not necessarily a motivation to do something. Yeah.
True, because humans have existed for more than 10,000 years, but it's only been in the last 50 years or so we've been really trapped inside.
Correct.
And then that urge to go out urge for nature is something
Why are all our rejuvenation weekend trips at the hill station or somewhere green, right? Most of our trips are like that. So there's something to say about nature helping you relax and calm. And we are all just generally more anxious now as people. So this definitely helps calm down and then again be more receptive, learn. Yeah.
So when it comes to anxiousness, I was just thinking that, is anticipation one kind of a reward as well? Because I remember going to Taj Mahal and, there was this whole built up of wanting to see Taj Mahal. And no matter which side of the road you are on, you will not see that beauty.
Correct.
You have to, come straight ahead to the main gate, and then that whole symmetry and the beauty of the space is kind of revealed. So you are building up that anticipation of that space, and then maybe turning around a corner and then seeing something different, or how you didn't expect a courtyard between the corridor array, and then suddenly something open comes up in that closed space. So this feeling of anticipating something novel or different or something like that is very crucial, not just to architecture, but even when I'm doing like interaction design and I'm looking at a website and I'm scrolling something and then something new comes up. Maybe that is also how Instagram reels function and work also, right? Because they go viral only when you do something that you don't anticipate.
Yeah. Or UX design, right? Any of these social media design, I'm sure they kind of use this because our brain is trained when we are not in fight or flight survival mode, right? Our brain is trained to like new things or be curious, be about novel things. Can I share another experiment with you? Mouse experiment. So we have this thing called as the Y maze, right? In the Y maze, it's shaped like a Y. So let's say we close off one arm of the Y and we put the mouse, which is a normal, not that stressed mouse, and let it explore the other arm and the tail of the Y. And that region then becomes familiar, right? And now in the second time we put the mouse back in the same Y maze, we remove the barrier to the excluded arm, right? So now that arm is the novel arm for this particular mouse. So this not so anxious mouse will go explore in the it'll spend more time in the new arm because that's the part it's not seen yet and it's more curious, whatever. But the same is if we do the same experiment with the mouse which we is predisposed to be anxious, right? This mouse will stick to its familiar arm. It will not go in the novel arm. So it's the same when it comes to anticipation. It depends on what state your nervous system is in as a human. If you're not already stressed, anxious, in a survival mode of sorts, you're probably not going to explore new things. You're going to stick to what you know, be in a familiar comfort zone, as we call it. But if you're chill, then you'll probably be like, oh, what's new? Let me check that out. Yeah.
Because when I was really studying history, Nishita, and I came across how these explorers from England came over and went through these forests of Madhya Pradesh, forests of Mahabaleshwar, and explored ruins in the space, and then fought with leopards on the way and all of it. And I was really thinking, if I was in their place, There's no way, no chance that I would explore into the wild.
Yeah.
Maybe the total number of suspense, thriller, horror movies that I have seen have, taught me that Raat ko, when if it is late night, that
Yeah.
I should not tread out, or the light should be on every time that I go everywhere.
Yeah.
So these are, kind of experiences which are second hand, that you get through storytelling, through the cinemas.
Yeah.
That also kind of defines your personality the same way that it happened to the mice in your wild maze.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. If a fear has been already established, right? Like we always yell at the person who goes to explore in the horror movie, why are you going there?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Are
But
you dumb?
yeah, but we've watched like, tens of those kind of movies and we know something's gonna go. The first person who goes to explore is going to
Yes.
go. So but uh that's the thing. Context informs us. Everything that is contextual to your lived experience or your second-hand lived experience of your friends, colleagues, family, cinema, everything is going to be your context informing uh, how you learn, memorize things later. So if like the enriched environment mice, all the kids are like in a nice enriched classroom from the get-go, then probably they are just gonna learn just for the sake of learning and won't need any reward or a stick per se.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the environment itself which is enriching, enabling,
Correct.
empowering,
They're going to
all
be
of it.
primed to learn.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
True. So, we've talked about kids quite a lot because that is, I believe, that is where most of our memories are kind of, formed, reinstated, and all of it. But the same logic that you said applies for offices, applies for museums. I'm sure when you are looking for interaction, applies for shopping centers. When you want, people to get into that, like, why is it that window shopping is, prominent, or is something that works, is may not just be a psychological thing, that there could be how the brain wires familiarity, looking at something again and again, and then kind of taking that decision of, okay, this is the piece that I need to
Correct.
buy.
You've done your due diligence. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, like, think about it. If when you think about space, anything can be a space, right? If you think about a Mumbai local, if you think about crowds, you do it because you have to. You don't want to be in that crowd. It's chaos, it's stressful, everything, right? Your adrenaline is high, whether you'll catch the train, you'll get off the train, you'll navigate through the crowd, everything. Whereas when you go to a, let's say, not weekend, nicely air conditioned mall, it's more relaxing, let's say, or like even like I said, like a weekend getaway or something like, or like a metro, something which is probably less crowded. So the space defines how you feel, and your brain remembers how you feel in that context. So the next time, then you're a bit more wiser. You'll change the time you go to not catch the rush hour, things like that, right? So that's the spatial memory kind of dictates everything if we think about it. Yeah.
And if you're consciously thinking about your actions, then they kind of inform your future actions as well.
Correct.
And that is the entire learning process that you talked about.
Correct.
If the initial actions were rewarding, then you continue to do what you did earlier. If they instill fear, anxiety, stress, or something like that, then you pause on that action and then you pivot.
Correct. So, and in the office as well, if your cubicle of that particular area is making you feel stressed, whatever, you try to go to a different team, or change the job, or go and talk to your boss about feeling some type of way, wanting a seat next to the window, or something like that. Something that will make your day to day better, right? Because you've noted that you don't feel great, and that's precisely, that's what your brain helps in doing. So you can hack it.
Correct.
You can definitely hack it.
So if I have to say, Nishita, from all that you've spoken right now, we need a hack system. Okay, that designers can use. How the brain functions. And how people can navigate or use the objects that they've designed, or spaces that they've designed, or experiences that they've designed. So
Right.
is there something like a cheat code or something like that that you could share with us, like a list of things that we need to consider?
Oh, I don't know about a cheat code, but I could say maybe designers could think of one thing. How do they want people to feel or experience in the space they design? Or what kind of
Feel, experience, and remember, because we talked about memory. So
correct, of course. The one and two are going to lead to the three, right? So what do the what do you architects want us to feel when we walk through a space, right? Because you are the ones designing the turns and the tunnels and the gullies and whatever, right? So how are we going to feel when we go through this? Is it going to be so dark and dingy that we are a bit like cautious, or is it going to be nice and wide and airy that we are like, okay, nice, what is after this, what is after this, like that sort of thing. So that way, if you think about what people will feel in your structures, then probably, or what people intend to do in your built structure, like say for example you're designing a school or a office, then you kind of know the end game and end result. So you kind of design things which will boost productivity or provide options for spaces where you can go relax for a bit, then come back and be productive, then go and be creative and exploring again, then come back and be more productive. You can include the more green, choose to have green spaces where people can go relax their nervous system, come back, focus on a task. So that sort of implementation, which is already being done quite a bit now, but have these distinctive features, have these things which will act as those nice memory anchors.
Build those enriched environments.
Build those mini enriched environments which will enable both focused tasks as well as more exploratory, relaxed learning and socializing and feeling and experiencing, right? So then all in all, then it's a place that you want to go to because you feel good at the end of the day. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So thanks a lot, Nishita. I think this was a really heartening, braining session, because quite very rarely do we actually try to demystify and unravel this. Why do we think like this? Why do we feel like this? Why do we behave like this? And you do see that there is a lot of architecture and design around you that kind of works based on this psychologically. And the thing about psychology is that it feels very personal. But the moment you kind of back it up with neuroscience and you say that, hey, this is scientific and
It's
hence
happening in
universal.
biology. Yeah.
Yes, and it's happening in biology, but it is universal. Like
Yeah.
the same things will happen, the same neurons will light up, the same thing will happen with reward and with when there is a stick involved, right? That kind of legitimizes the whole thinking process of design itself. I think that was really beautifully put out by you. We have a small token of appreciation from our side.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. Thank you.
These are two books, both of them published by MES Publications. The 75 Buildings of India was actually done on the 75th independence anniversary of India, and the other one on Panvel is about this place and its history, heritage, mythology, architecture, and all of it put together. So the aspects of space that you talked about, how space becomes memory. I'm sure that when you go through these books and you walk through the lanes of Panvel or you look at these buildings,
It's
then
gonna strike some. Yeah. No, thank you. I'm happy.
super. Thanks a lot. So with this, we've come to the closure of our podcast of form, function, and future, where we focused on what goes on inside our brain. In the next part, in the next series, we'll have a conversation with architect Ratan Batlipur and talk about the SMLXL aspects of design, from small, medium, large to the extra large. Maybe look at the design of Marine Drive, maybe look at the inspiration that it gave to the coastal zone, and so many more things. Thank you so much.